Hey, I'm sorry about that, you guys. I didn't realize that we had dropped. Um, hmm. Day of week, days in year. Hey, welcome back, Ole. Um, I apologize for that. I don't know why it dropped. I just got notifications from you guys and then looked, and yeah, the stream had completely stopped. I don't know what happened. But right now we're just trying to figure out. So you can add equals since subtract to JSON to locale string to plain date time to plain month day to plain year month to zoned date time until value of hmm. So here's the thing. We're doing a conversion. Hey, Michael, welcome back. Again, I apologize for the stream dropping. I'm not sure what caused that. Everything seemed to be going well, and then I got the notifications from you guys. So I'm not sure what's going on here. Temporal may not be the right way to go here. So this is creating the ISO date time. I think, and let's let's verify this, right? But I think that there is a way. Within our signal forms. I think there is a way. Can I not pick this? Oh, reload. Okay, so signal forms. So let's look at next steps here. Signal forms essentials, designing field state validation, custom controls. And I think within here, yeah, that all works. Understanding control interfaces, form value, form checkbox, optional state properties, field metadata. Adding state signals. So these are fine. Value.set. See, we're still using this. Value transformation. This is what I was looking for. Sometimes display values differently. A date picker might display January 15th while storing this, or a currency might show this while storing this. Use linked signal from Angular core to transform the model value for display and handle input events to parse the user input back to the storage format. So here we've got a display value and an input event. Interesting. So we're using an update on the linked signal, which, so the linked signal is calling format currency. An update model is on the blur event. So they're parsing out the currency and okay. Interesting. So we're using linked signals and so we'll need a linked signal also. Oh, let's do that. Let's take a look at what Ole has done. Thank you for that, Ole. Let's go over here. I think it is this one. So the first thing we can do is let's go take a look at our pull request. Added Spartan with Daisy. Yeah, let's do that. But let's first take a look at this branch. Let's create a new pull request. Well, actually, let's see what pull. Oh, come on. Come on here, you guys. Let's go over to the one where I'm logged in. So let's bring this one over. And let's go to my repositories and my signal forms. And let's go to my pull requests. And here's Spartan with Daisy. Let's see which branch this came off of. This came off of main. So with the files that were changed by Ole, let's take a look. So components.json adds Spartan. We've added a config.mjs. Oh, come on. My computer was acting up. Spartan generated it itself. Okay. Let's go back. I will leave that alone. Instead, what am I doing? So let's just make sure that we have everything stashed and committed. This is fine. And our date picker, this will be fine for now. So we'll go ahead and commit these. Push this. And then we look at our remote branches. I didn't want to check that out. That was not what I wanted to do. Let's go see if it'll let me see your branch. Okay. So let's grab this. We'll grab this. And because it's not a branch, we're going to need to check it out to a new directory. So we're going to clone that. And we're going to put this in SF2 for signal forms 2, and we're going to clone the repo. So let's go ahead and open that. So this is Ole's branch. Let's go here. Let's go /SF2. And now we need to do an pnpm install. So this should go pretty quick because he should have most of the same stuff I do. And then we can do a serve on this branch. Oh, the issue we have, and there are a bunch of different ways to solve this. But the issue we have right now is the date time zone is just a problem, and it's always been a problem. TypeScript doesn't understand temporal yet. So we have a couple of things we could do. So we're running our post install scripts now. We're good. So now we should be able to serve this. This must be Spartan kicking some stuff off. So we've got Daisy running. Oh no. Type field tree date. Oh, we can fix this up pretty easily. We'll just grab JetBrains. We'll fire up WebStorm. And we're going to open dev and SF2. We're going to select this folder. Let's go full screen. I haven't opened this in a while, so it may want to do some weird stuff, but that's okay. So in source, in components, and it's in controls, our date picker control. Inside of here, we just need a quick let field equal this dot field. So there we go. That should fix this. Oh, no, it shouldn't. I need one last thing. That will fix it. And this can't be has error. It has to be invalid. So there we go. That should fix up the compile. Yep. And now, take a look at this. So here's the Spartan version of it. Yeah, we're still getting the same issue. We've still got the same issue. Is this the Spartan version? Am I on your branch? Let's just make sure. Oh, I'm on main. Main is the wrong branch. That's also probably why I had the same errors. They hadn't been fixed up. Let's go here. We'll go ahead and we'll just discard this right here. Oh, come on. We're just going to discard all changes. Boom. And we're going to check this out. There we go. Now we're on your branch. One thing I want to do is let's go back here to this. And we want to pnpm install just to make sure we get everything. Because we need to make sure we get the Spartan libraries and run all of that stuff. So now we're on the Spartan date picker. So now we should be able to serve it, which means it probably has all the fixes in place. So now if we refresh, okay, took a little while to do that. Okay, so Spartan's date picker is a little bit different. Now if we save it, I think something's not transferring across, Ole. But what we need to do to make this work, you can see the updates to the styles. Yeah. What I do want to do is just show people how to fix the issue we've got here, right? Because we've got this time zone issue. And so what we can do is we need to follow what Angular was saying. So we need the linked signal for the display value. So let's go back to our code here. So it's using a date string computed. So we'll do the same thing. We're not going to use a computed. We will use a linked signal here. So the display value is going to be a linked signal, and we're going to format the date. We're going to format a date stream and see what happens. So we can see up here, we're binding the value and then the input. So we're going to do the same. Oops, what am I doing here? So let's go ahead and we want a linked signal. So we're going to have a read-only protected. Actually, it's the other way around. Protected read-only. Read-only, and this is our display value. Equals, and here we're going to do a linked signal. Does that work? That's an ugly linked signal. And I don't think that works. So let's take a look at this. So our linked signal is going to have that this dot field dot value. Why doesn't it like value from field? Oh, I need 2 here. That's ugly. That's really ugly. But I need 2 because this is a signal that returns a field tree. So this first, oh, that's really ugly, but that works. So if we don't have a value, so then here, instead of binding to the field, we can now bind to the value and set that to display value, which is ugly, but it will work. Actually, I don't even think we need to go this far. What I think we can do is we can bind a field. And instead of this, all we really want to do is set the same time. So we can add back in our input here. So our input equals handle input event. And for right now, what we're going to do is we're just going to console.log our event. No. And let's just see what we get. So Now, when we go back to our time here, let's pull open our console and let's clear it. So here, if we set this to be like the 31st, we get our input event, and our input event has a couple of things on it. So our target has a value. Value is date. So, oh, so it is a string. So we don't even need this. What we could do here, we're going to need our handle input event still. But our display value, we're going to bring this back and we're going to convert it to a string. And this will be protected date string. Yep, we're going to pull that out. And I turned on my num lock. That's fine. I don't care. But here, this is going to be our date value as date or undefined. So if we don't have a date value, we're going to return it. We can pull that out. We want date value to get full year, month. So there we go. So that's going to handle this. So now our display value is we're going to read the value. If we don't have a value, we're going to return an empty string. Otherwise, instead of this ugliness, we're going to return the date string of our value. And up here in our inputs, instead of the field, let's add our value here. That's our display value. So now, if we refresh this, let's just look at this, and yep, we get 111.26. And if we select like the 29th, we still get 111.26 here because we haven't updated anything. But our date picker is handling it properly. So we've got that piece in place. The next piece that we want to take a look at is notice here that on the value, we're setting the display value. Whoops. So on our input, we're setting the display value again. So Michael shared a quick piece with me earlier this week where functions are possible. This is one place where we might take a look at functions, but I don't like putting this kind of logic in my inputs. because they always tend to grow. So let's fix this, right? So the next thing we need to do is we need an input here. So our input, do we need the input? That's the thing. I don't think we do. Um, I think we're wrong. I think we do. So we need our input here equals handle input, and that's our event. So here we can change this. So input is our event target. Got a date string is our value. Field.value.set undefined. We need 2 there, and we need 2 there. So let's see if this works, because basically what we're doing with this is we're setting the date time to midnight. So let's take a look here. We don't need the input and blur stuff here because our input is always when something's selected. I tried that example, some kind of mask, but unfortunately your value will become the same as a display value, which is what we, yeah. I think we're working around it. So here, if we say we go here and we go here, we should have 520, right? And now if we come back, we've got 520. And if we go down and we save, we've got 516, which is the same. So now if we go back to, March 2028, and we pick the Ides of March, right? The famous date, 315. So we're getting it correct now. If we pick the 31st here, we're getting it correct. What we did to fix this, and this is entirely a problem with JavaScript, TypeScript. Well, JavaScript, but TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript, right? This is entirely a problem with JavaScript, and this is the issue that temporal is supposed to solve. Basically, what we did is we created like our own version of a date only. How did we do that? Well, first we created a linked signal. So if the date value changes, our linked signal is going to change, right? And I like more space in my methods. I like my methods to be a little bit more readable. So we created this date. Well, we didn't. This is from Claude. Claude created this. But basically what it's doing is it's turning the date value into the full year, the month, and the date. This removes all of the time and the time zone mess from it. So all we're using for our date picker is just a year, month, day. Luckily, the date picker can accept an ISO 8201 date, which is what we're passing here with the full year, month, and day. Then the next thing we need to do is handle when that input changes. And so you can see here our binding is no longer just the field. Now we've got a value and we've got an input bind, right? So our value is always our display value. Our display value will always be the linked signal. and then our date string will be calculated off that. So if the reason we're using linked signal instead of computed is linked signal allows us to change the value, but if something, if the field value changes, then our linked signal is going to go back and change, right? So we can update display value all we want, but if we get a new value, it's going to change to that new value, which allows us to make changes to the value from code or elsewhere. Updating the signal store is going to update this with our linked signal. Linked signals are really, really cool, really, really powerful. The last thing we have to do is handle the inputs, right? So we grab the event, we grab the target off the event, and we grab the value from that. The value is going to be the date string. And so in that case, we need to convert the date string to a date. What it's doing is it's adding the date string, and then it's adding midnight is the time. That's what you almost always do with this stuff, is you set the time at midnight. And that way time zones tend to be less problematic. It's not a guaranteed solution, and there are still bugs that can pop up here, but there will be fewer bugs, and it works for me, right? The last thing we can do is we can actually get the clear to work. So in the past, the clear didn't work. Now the clear should work. So if we click the clear button, it's not working. Oh, interesting. Let's try this one. So the clear button is clearing. So that's very interesting. We still got a bug. Still got a bug. What is our bug here? So if we clear this and we save it, and then we go back, and we do like 3, my numlock's off. We go 3, 15, 20, 28. So our linked signal isn't updating. So there's a couple of things we can do here. This doesn't have to be this dot field. Instead, this can be our this dot display value. Yeah, there we go. So now if we set our display value to that, when we clear, we get that. But it's not setting, oh. So our display value is clearing, but our actual value is not. Let's track this down, right? Let's track down what's happening here. So we know this was working. So if we track this down, let's make sure that everything is working. So we'll clear this date. Boom. Ah. So display value changed and we broke our form. So let's delete this again. Let's edit this. So there's our display value change. As soon as we click this, field R5 is not a function. Date picker template. So undefined is a problem in our template. So let's see what is causing our problem here. So we get the field. All imports are unused. Oh, yep, you're right. We aren't using these anymore. So there we go. So field and label, field dot value. What would make this break? Because if we come back here and we clear this, right? And then we save it. We've got the no due date, which is expected. However, as soon as we go to edit it, field R5 is not a function. I'm curious. This is the problem with using undefined, but what if instead of undefined, we change this to that, to a date or an empty string? And here we can change that. And so now when we clear this, hey, look at that. No due date. Look at that. So the problem comes down to the undefined. And undefined becomes a problem in a lot of cases with Angular. Especially when we're using signals with Angular. Um, and I think these deep signals have problems too. I think that's what we're running into is issues with that. Because now that we've got this in place, we can now clear our date. We can now select our date. And like this one, right? So, and that doesn't work because in the past, so we've got these very, very cool. That works. I'm just trying to figure out but one thing we should have is this disabled here. So let's go fix our disabled really quick. So actually first let's save this. This should not be that anymore. It should be a date or an empty string. And actually, what we could just make this date, and instead of using undefined here, what we would do is we could do, if not date value, fine, but we could also say, or date value equals date dot min. Was there not a date dot min value? Let's. Is there not a date min value in JavaScript? Date dot min value JavaScript. The min value. Let's take a look at a couple of these. So the first one is new date 0. Uh, Not good. Not good. So I think the best way to go about this, instead of trying to do what I'm doing here, I'm trying to eliminate the weirdness of an empty string. But that's just not going to be possible. So at this point, that's also setting the field improperly. Because that was going to introduce the same bug. And we could see that here. So let's handle input here, right? So if we go back to our code and we pull up our console, and here, instead of doing this, if we just delete every piece of the date, we already get the R5 is not a function, right? So we have to fix that piece too. So there we go. And now if we go in and we, delete pieces of the date, oh, delete that and delete that, then, right, we aren't getting, the value is changed to an empty string, and that's fine. So we're getting the behavior we expected. It really does come down to undefined and all of that fun stuff. Yeah. So Michael says that the recommendations for default signal form field values gets weird with dates. I don't know if I agree with all the assumptions, but a lot of them are hashed OTU in the docs or issues. Yeah, and this is where dates, if you guys have never read the article, there's a famous article out there called "You Can't Do Dates" or something like that. I'll need to look it up. But there's this article out there. See if I can find it. This one might be it. Yeah. This is a crazy article to go through, but it just shows you how difficult dates are. On how select vals shouldn't be entire objects, even though people used. Yeah, and that, like, there's a lot. So Michael's talking about how select values shouldn't be objects, even though objects are used by almost every programmer. It's such a there's so much opinionation in there, and there's a lot of smart people that have really good ideas, and those good ideas are based on their experiences, and other people have good ideas based on their experiences, and everybody's experience is different, right? But there are certain things that are just super difficult. dates are difficult, names are difficult, things like that. But this is just crazy, right? All of these assumptions are wrong. There are always 24 hours in a day. This is not true. There are days when there are fewer, and there are days when there are more based on leap seconds. Months either have 30 or 31 days. We obviously know that's wrong. Yep. Years have 365 days. That's obviously wrong. Leap years, there's 366, right? February is always 28 days long. No leap years. Again, any 24-hour period will always begin and end in the same day or week or month. This one is fun. And this is what we were running into with our times, because our 24-hour period wasn't ending in the same day. And if you're on like a month border, it's not even guaranteed to end in the same week or month. A week always begins and ends in the same month. That one's pretty obvious. A week or month always begins and ends in the same year. This one is crazy, and you should read about that. The machine that a program runs on will always be in the GMT time zone. This one, like, this is what everybody tries to figure out. We throw everything to GMT and try. It's a bad solution to do GMT. Okay, that's not true, but at least the time zone in which a program has to run will never change. That's wrong. Daylight savings time will change time zones easily. Well, surely there will never be a change with a time zone in which a program has to run in production. That's not true. Time, like again, daylight savings time. The system clock will always be set to the correct local time. If you guys have ever worked with servers, you know this is wrong. System clock will always be set to a time that is not wildly different. This is wrong. The system clock is incorrect. It will at least be off by a consistent number. No. The server clock, right? But there's just so many things here. Time has no beginning and no end. 1 minute on the system clock has the exact same duration as 1 minute on any other clock. And this comes down to variations of clock cycles and stuff like that. Like, all of these things lead to bugs. This is a fascinating page. And there's more falsehoods, right? Just look at the sheer number of falsehoods that programmers believe about time. And you get into things like black holes, and there's other crazy stuff. Like, if you put a server on an airplane, because of its difference from the gravity well of Earth, time flows faster for the server that's flying on an airplane than it does for everything else that's on Earth, just sheerly due to gravity. That's why for these highly accurate, atomic clocks, they actually specify how high above sea level the clocks have to be, so the calculations based on the atomic vibrations are accurate for that, right? So that all the atomic clocks give the same time, because they're so sensitive to fluctuations in gravitational fields and things like that. And one of the fascinating things about time is that the closer you get to a stronger gravity well, the slower time goes for you. This leads to an interesting paradox with black holes, in that as you're being spaghettified into black holes from an outside observer's point of view, you were instantly, spaghettified by the black hole. From your point of view, it will never end. You're going to be there infinitely. And it's just fascinating things with physics, and right. And we've never proven that, because there is no way for us to prove it. But it's all of the weird stuff that happens with time, and you're going to run into these edge cases everywhere. So you should definitely take a look at this. There's a bunch of other articles by this same person, just about all the different falsehoods that programmers believe about different things. And it's just, it's almost crazy how many ways you can get time wrong. And that's what led to our issue today. I wish we had temporal. Temporal would have solved this issue immediately. If we could have just bound a temporal value, and we probably could have. We could have added a. We could have added a like a library or something that would have done it for us, right? But we didn't. We've got our date time picker in place. This is what I wanted to get done for today, and just look at some of the crazy stuff we had to do, right? To handle dates and times, we can't use the field input because of time zones, right? The stupid thing, the incredibly stupid thing is because of time zones, our picker here doesn't work. And it's frustrating. Right? Our clear button now works. Our label displays properly. So we're not losing our label anymore when we clear this. So, you know, when we save this and we clear it, our label is properly there. You know, when we pick a date, it all works. So there's some craziness there, right? With the undefined, and the issue we have is when the field value went to undefined, then reading these things caused problems. So we couldn't read the signal. And the reason for that is that a lot of signals break when you put an undefined in them. And you'll see that quite regularly. This is the reason that that monads and like optional values are something that we probably need to look into more as a community. Yeah, that's going to be a big thing. As we use signals more and more, and we find signals breaking more and more because of undefined, hopefully it starts to break our dependency on undefined in our TypeScript in our Angular projects. What really should happen here is we should add an optional value here. So optional date and things like that. Date or undefined shouldn't be allowed. And maybe that's something we could take a look at in the future. I think we're going to call it on the signal store stuff. I think it's time to get into something new. And something a little more, I don't know what. I don't know. I need to think about what we're going to do next Sunday. I'm not sure yet. I mean, the problem is there's always things I want to do. One of the things I think would be good to do, and we've got our full stack dynos project. I think it would be, oh, you know what? We're not done here. There's a couple of things I wanted to do with this. So next week, we're going to take a look at some stuff with Zod. Right now, there's no way to save data. I would like to make this so that we can save data, but that we can also paste new to-dos in and things like that. Hey, edible, whatever. Thanks for getting a ban in at the very end. Yeah. Well, and temporal is kind of, so if you look, there's like Luxion, there's date FNS, right? Like date functions, there's there's a bunch of different date handling libraries out there. I'm not going to mention the big one because you shouldn't be using that one. We'll just leave it at that. Um, but there are a lot of good date handling libraries out there. And um, temporal is supposed to solve a lot of the issues that those date handling libraries, like, right? So all of those date handling libraries are the companies getting together to hash out their standards. And different companies invest in the library that they like best. But I do agree with you that dates in JavaScript are probably the worst language to work in them. Because like .NET has date only, time only, date time, but none of those things have time zones associated with them. If you want to get into the mess of time zones, then you have to start working with time zone libraries, and that's fine, right? And that's the way that the JavaScript probably should have worked. Unfortunately, because of the international nature of everything, um, I'm not a fan of people who let their dogs poop in my front yard. I got distracted by somebody letting their dog poop in my front yard. I'm not a fan of that. Clean up after your puppy. If you're going to take your dog out for a walk, clean up. Um, but I'll get off my soapbox on that one. It's still a mess. Temporal will fix that mess, and that's supposed to come out this year. We moved from redacted to Luxian, but whenever temporal is standard, I imagine we will have a reckoning in our code base on what we are used to use consistently versus should we just start then with temporal. Yeah, and that's the tough thing, right? And redacted was an amazing library for a very long time. And Luxian is or Luxon. I keep saying Luxian. I don't even know where I'm getting Luxian from. But Luxon. Luxon is their replacement, and it's a good library. The only problem with the redacted library is that it's just too big and it causes it causes bloat. There are ways to get around that too, but to your point, Michael, and this there was a talk given about this by I want to say Shai Resnick, I think, at NGConf one year, where he talked about specifically dates as part of the example. And we were like 80% redacted and 20% newest stuff, especially our one separate client repo, all Luxon. So it would be weird to have three approaches without a good convo and strat. And this is where, where I was headed with that thought was I think it was Shai that gave the talk on facades, right? Where you build a facade over your date, however you're handling your dates, right? Build a facade over it and then use that facade. And that way, when you go to, when you go from, redacted to Luxon or date FNS or whatever you're using, and then you move to temporal, well, really all you're doing is you're changing the concrete implementation to temporal, and everything changes, right? Your facade stays the same. And your facade could even mirror whatever library you built over the top of. But the benefit of a facade is it gives you the ability to it abstracts your actual implementation from the code, and it helps to avoid the stuff that you're talking about, Michael. The problem we have as engineers, and I say this almost every day at work, and it's because it's true. The problem we have as engineers is we were sold this bill of goods that told us that sprints were the right way to write software, and all of this other stuff that comes along with Scrum, right? And we were told that that's how agile software is written. All of that was false, right? Like, I'm not saying sprints are bad. I'm not saying any of that. But what I am saying is that the bill of goods we were given and sold was false. The issue we have is that as engineers, we're really, 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 really good at optimizing for the constraints that we're given, right? And that's like one of the hallmarks of engineers anywhere. You know, structural engineers are really, really, really good at optimizing for, you know, material, structural integrity, all of the other stuff, right, that they have to optimize for. As software engineers, we're really, really, really good at optimizing for the constraints we're given too. What's the constraint that sprints gave us? Well, the constraint that sprints gave us is that everything has to fit in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks, right? Whatever your sprint is, right? So as engineers, what did we do? Well, we got really, really good at optimizing everything to fit into that time box. That leads to messes, right? That leads to the issues that you're talking about, Michael, right? Where 80% of our code base is this, 20% is this, because we optimized for time and we didn't take the time to look at it and go, oh, you know what? Maybe in the future we don't want to use this library. Let's build a facade over the top of it, and then, you know, introduce that facade, and, you know, then in the future when we change one place, right? Now, you guys, because you optimize for time, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what you did, because that's what everybody does, and, you know, it's what you had to do with the constraints you were given. But because we optimize for time, we've now got redacted library in 80% of the code base. We've got Luxon in 20% of the code base. And to change that, we've got to go to every place where it's used and change it, right? And that's the issue that we've got. The issue isn't that you used redacted library versus Luxon versus whatever. That's not the issue, right? Because redacted library was 100% the correct choice when you made that choice. That's why 80% of your code base has it, right? Luxon is 100% the correct choice for you guys at this point in time. In the future, temporal may or may not be the correct choice. The problem that you've got is that because we optimized for time, right? Not optimized for anything else. And we did that because we have sprints where you have to hit the sprints, and if you don't hit the sprints, then, you know, who knows what happens, and it's a mess. We didn't take the time to build the facade. We didn't take the time to look at the architecture, and that's. I'm going to tell you this right now. Every company's in that boat. Every company has been writing agile software this way, but what happens is that the software is quick to write in the beginning, but then as you meet, you know, as your software becomes middle-aged, it becomes much slower. And then as it reaches near end of life, it becomes so slow that everybody hates working with it. we give it the legacy code pejorative, right? Nobody wants to touch legacy code. And then once enough people have to work in legacy code and they scream and yell loud enough, the company gives you budget to rewrite, and you make the same mistakes all over again. One of the thought experiments I've been I've been looking at lately is look at the cathedrals in Europe, right? These giant buildings that took years to build, but they still stand. What are our software cathedrals? And what does it mean to create a software cathedral? Could it even be possible to create software that would stand for 100 years, 200 years, 1,000 years? Is that even possible? I don't know. But the average lifespan of software right now just seems very, very fleeting when you look at a lot of other things, and it feels wrong to me. It feels like companies spend, and it feels like companies spend a ton of money building the same stuff over and over again. It feels like we as developers spend a ton of time building the same stuff over and over again. And it feels like that there is a better way to do it, but I don't know what that is. So I'm having these thought experiments about what would that look like? What would it be? And maybe that's something that we dig into more this year also. Um, but yeah, we're going to come back to this one more time. We're going to have anti-gravity help us create something using local DB to store our. We don't want our to-dos to be fleeting, right? We want to be able to store them. We want to be able to retrieve them. What does that look like? From there, the last piece I want to do is give the ability for a user to copy and paste tasks between, who knows, maybe you want to email tasks to somebody else. How would we do that? That's the last piece that I want to add, and then I would consider this done. The only reason I want to bring those up is because they're going to figure into how do signal stores react with some sort of storage. That's a good piece to look. The other thing is we're going to dig into more into Zod. And right now, Zod just feels like an expensive piece that we bolted onto our application because we could use Zod. We're not getting all the benefits of Zod, and that's the piece that I really want to dig into is now that we've created these Zod parsers, what benefit do we get, right? Why don't we just use the Angular default parsers? What benefit does Zod give us over everything else? And I want to dig into that just a little bit. So, that's maybe 1 or 2 weeks more, and then from there, I don't know. Maybe it's time to write a new game, and maybe we get into that kind of stuff. I would like to update the Angular dynos to use signal forms. I think that would be a powerful way to look at what does it take to convert from one to the other. So there are a couple of things that I want to take a look at. But thank you all for being here. Thank you all for joining back up after the stream crash. We'll be back next week. We'll be continuing this next week